Okay, welcome everybody. It is round 7. Hard to believe we have gotten to this point so quickly, but here we are. So awesome. Let's just take a moment since we're here on a Leo scale, drop in the chat how you are feeling today. If you feel comfortable doing that, we'd love to know. Oh, Wendy and I are on the same page. It's my Friday, so.
I am.
Oh, we got some 6s. Very nice. Everybody's doing okay. Yeah. Tim's a 2. I'm not sure what that look means. He's like, oh, baby. Okay. Awesome. Olivia, is there anything you need to tell us? Okay.
No, I'm at a baseball game, so it's a little noisy.
Chaos. Always fun.
Yeah.
All right. And we got a bunch of shout outs this week. Dan and Amelia, it was awesome to see you guys at Club Nationals. Congrats for getting those assignments. That's great. Jenny, Lindsay wanted to give you a shout out for coming to the Beantown game and keeping penalty count for her. She said that was awesome and it's great to see you. Tim, Wendy said your self-review and self-reflection was awesome this week. So good work there. Lindsay, you did a great job following up on your takeaways from last week and applying them this week in your match. So that's super. Love to see it. And then Amelia, congrats for your appointment to that USA v Canada U23 game coming up. So doing awesome, crew. Keep it up. Results from the week looked like this. All Blues 41-26 over Life West. That unfortunate canceled game due to air quality. And then Beantown over North Shore 64-0, which, I mean, despite that scoreline, was a pretty fun game to watch, I thought. So that says a lot about the way Lindsay handled that. And then here's what our updated standings look like. Beantown is slowly pulling a little bit ahead of the All Blues there. So 6 games played versus 6-1 versus 6 played and 5-1. And then we're seeing a little bit more spread down here. Life West is falling a bit. And unfortunately, New York and the Gray Wolves had to tie. So this is how that fell out due to that tie with the canceled match. So they are not going to play that, just so everybody knows. It was going to be postponed and now it is canceled. So any questions? Everybody happy? All right. Who wants to start tonight? Lindsay or Tim? Nobody said they had huge preference.
It's up to you, Lindsay.
If you want, I can go ahead and go so that Olivia can get off for her baseball game.
Good call.
Yeah, so jumping into it, it was a fun game, really. I mean, very uneven score, but actually, like, Chicago had some good ball in hand. They had some defensive pressure at times. Really all right matchup at the set pieces. So it wasn't boring at any time. I worked on my minimizing talking some, which I think went pretty well. I unfortunately forgot to wear my recorder this week, but I think I still did pretty well with that and steadily improving. And I felt like I got some good improvement on my movement and like keeping the work rate up the whole time and not getting disengaged in the last like 5 minutes of each half and following the ball better at like line out time. You can see, ouch, cat. Mostly tackler penalties, which seems to be the trend most of the time. I don't think it really required a yellow card. Beantown did have a bit more, but they were pretty spread out throughout the match, and I think escalating would have been a little heavy-handed, really. But yeah, fun time.
Awesome. Olivia, did you have anything to add?
No, Lindsay and I talked earlier, and it's really fun to see how she's made so many adjustments already. It was like she was working all these things, put them in place, and now they're like flourishing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Where do you want to start, Lindsay?
I'm gonna start with number one.
Upright
The
tackle. Oh, there we
obstruction
go.
or no. Yeah.
Ah, yes.
I kind of was doing this balancing act of like, you don't know the ARs really well and how much can you take in versus also like I'm trying to work on trusting them a little bit and not waving off every single thing they say. And so I had an AR call in for obstruction here. I kind of saw it but wasn't really sure, but I was like, Beantown's been having some lines that have been a little questionable. This might be a good like standard setter, just to remind them like not to block people. But it kind of like on review looks maybe a little soft. I don't know that it had too much of an impact, and it's more of like I put my shoulder into them and guided them off of the ball carrier a little bit. So I was just curious to see what other people thought of it. Okay, it was back there at the very beginning. Yeah.
Okay, I'll try to slow it down. It's gonna happen about mid-screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who has thoughts about this one? Everybody see it? So did you observe it at all live or is it straight call in?
I didn't really see it.
Yeah. So referee want to take this?
This is Jenny.
Hey, Jenny.
To me, it seems like the Beantown has a right to that line to drop back. They didn't have a drastic change in line. So for me, that's a play on because they have a right to get into a position to support. And their shoulder, it seems like they're shoulder to shoulder.
Okay.
I'm kind of with Jenny. I mean, it's kind of hard. You're kind of looking for it and it's not like super clear and obvious. And for me, they're playing and they're running along. It didn't obstruct anything too much. So I say play on here.
Okay. Anybody feel strongly in the other direction? Okay. Coaches, can we agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. This is Miles. It's just a process thing. Like obstruction isn't a primary duty of an AR, so it's kind of like I'm surprised that you got that come in, and it's one of those things that if you don't call it immediately, then no one probably knows what you're calling, right? So I'm just questioning that more than anything. I don't know if it's a pre-game chat thing when you kind of go over their responsibilities, but certainly. I wouldn't think obstruction would be one of them, but I'm not sure.
Obstruction falls under foul play, so it actually is an AR primary responsibility. But if you said that you didn't want obstruction, I could understand why, especially if they're going to call something like that, which looks marginal, if not an obstruction.
Yeah, did you emphasize clear and obvious when you were speaking with them?
I felt like I did, but my AR pregame chat is still an ongoing work in progress. I feel like I'm trying something new, talking to them every time.
Lindsay, one of those ARs also AR'd my game right before that, and there was a very similar play where there supposedly was an obstruction and he missed it. So I think maybe he might have just been overcompensating if that's who it was.
Yeah, that was who called that in.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. Awesome. Good chat. Next one, Lindsay.
Yeah, we can do number 2, improved line out movement. I just wanted to highlight that I did better at something, and still working on doing it every single line out, but a good number of lineouts I took off at a good time and followed the ball much better than I did in the previous week. So
I think that may have just cut you off there, but we could see the takeoff. So awesome.
yeah, the takeoff was the main takeaway.
Yeah.
I had some patterns of just kind of standing there watching and not moving until it like the ball has made it down and is going out. So
Yeah, that was a
happy,
perfect track.
happy improvement.
Thank you for sharing that one.
Yeah. My next two are some upright tackles, and I kind of wanted to get the group feel about these. This first one, I didn't call either of them. This first one, I don't think foul play occurs, but it was sort of a trend of a match of a lot of Beantown upright tackles. First contact point being more of like chest to chest, and then the head kind of fitting in cheek to cheek, almost like literally their face cheek to cheek. So there's no head contact, no foul play for me. I'm just kind of wondering how and if we should be taking any preventative measures throughout these games of asking them to lower the tackle height, and if this is like going to be a build up to a problem or foul play in the future, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, pretty clear clip.
Yeah, so like I think their head, Beantown Blue, goes behind green. I don't think it's foul play, but there were just so many of these that it's just kind of putting me on edge the whole time, and green's feeling a little bit unsafe going into contact. And so I don't want to be heavy-handed and teach them how to tackle, but at the same time, like an inch difference and you have a red card in some of these situations.
Yep. Does one of the referees want to address Lindsay's first question about, is there anything preventative that we should do in these situations, or are we all just kind of playing along and waiting till we see head contact?
I don't know. I think this is hard because, sorry, this is Tim. I think it's hard because if you let this go on, then, towards the end of the game, you might get into an issue where there's a high tackle and you're kind of put to, something like this. So, but I think if you're going to deal with this, it has to be very early on. It has to be something early on where it's not going to impact them. It's not going to be maybe in their half. But no, it's tough because you don't want to interfere with the game. At the same time, you don't want to have to deal with this as it progresses throughout the game, and then you're forced to give a yellow card or red card kind of later in the game, and it really impacts it. So that's a tough one.
Anybody
Yeah,
else?
this is Miles. I promise I don't want to just hear the sound of my own voice. But that's, I mean, the tackle's legal, right? But it's one of those things that tacklers taking on a tremendous risk by tackling like that, because like you said, Lindsay, it's inches difference. So I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, hey, the tackles are very upright, could potentially be dangerous. Just be careful. But yeah, it's not great tackle technique, is it?
I think I'm in a similar camp to Miles. Just wondering if, like, at a set piece or when ball is dead, if you can have a quick chat with the captain, or if you get a number, just a quick word saying, hey, that last tackle was legal, but it's right on the line. If we can lower it, that'd be great. That kind of script.
Yep, I think
And,
that's
And this is Marty. I just also want to say that we could also start that conversation before the match with the captain's chat. Just be like, hey, we want to look at positive pictures at every aspect of the match, and put that onus on them early.
Good. Lindsay, one more? Two more.
Yeah, the other one's another upright tackle. I also played on here. I am a little more on the fence that this may have warranted like a penalty. The contact point being more of a chest to head. They're both standing up though. It's kind of weird, and I don't really know what to think about it, honestly.
So everybody seeing that? It's pretty short. I can't even hit the So you played on, I just played through it.
Yeah, there is head contact. I just am kind of on the fence whether or not I would consider that foul play.
Okay.
Tackler do anything to go to lower herself?
Doesn't look like it. In fact, I would say it's more of an upward movement.
Yeah, maybe there's your message sender.
And this is the middle of the field.
Yeah, that's midfield.
Yeah, I mean, you're 15 minutes in the game, midfield. You're not giving up points. You could do a whistle here and penalty only, and have a conversation with them. Might be an easy low impact point to make your statement there.
Does anybody feel strongly about penalizing or not penalizing this?
Lindsay, this is Andrew. Did this second clip happen before or after the one right before it?
That was my question.
That is a good question, because I kind of clipped them or added them to the meeting sporadically, so I don't know if they were actually in time order.
Yeah. Yeah, because to me, the first thing that stood out is it's the same player twice in a row now. I'm pretty sure it's been 14 twice. Yeah, 14 twice,
7 minutes.
7 minutes apart.
Good
Like that's a behavior that we got to change, and I think this one's marginal enough. I agree with Tim. Like, it's not going to have a points impact, but it sends a message.
It's a good catch that it's the same player. That almost makes it an easy penalty. We happy?
Yep, looks good. Last one, called Scrum Context Clues. I had multiple scrums before this. Two in particular where the blue loose head definitely drove straight up and I didn't call it. I was kind of taking in too much materiality, I guess, like thinking the ball got out, so we're good, let's play on. But it was so far up that I should have called it for like being dangerous. But I took note of it in my mind, and then we get to this scrum and I felt really happy with my mental process here, because I took stock of, okay, it's a green scrum on the 5 meter line. They're under pressure. The blue loose head is more than likely going to try to stand up and turn it around so that they can't get it to their kicker. You can play the clip.
Solid call, believable. Looks good. Nice work.
Thank you.
Any other comments about that call from anybody? Cool. Yeah, you've really been working on scrums. That's great. Anything else from y'all? Cool. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Tim?
Hey, everybody. Yeah, my emotion kind of came from this game originally. I was, it was one of these games. I think it was a little frustrating for me. I feel like I recognized things, but I didn't recognize them early enough, and I didn't kind of deal with them, and that kind of led to the game, things in the game that I maybe could have prevented. And so it was one of those critical points where I could have said something or done something differently, and I didn't. And then the game kind of got away from me a little bit. And then at halftime, I think I, was able to figure out what was going on and make some quick changes. The second half was a lot better than the first half. Kind of two big trends I had was, you had a team that had big, strong runners, and the tacklers were kind of getting in the way, and I didn't referee that harsh enough for that one team. And then there was a lot of kind of high tackles, dangerous tackles that I didn't deal with again. Kind of I let them go, and then it got to the point where it was too late. Yeah, I have some clips around all that stuff, and then I'll let Wendy say her bit.
Do you want me to say it now? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Tim, I think he's right. I really agree that he came to when we had our chance to chat, he knew what he had gone wrong already. And so his review was very self-honest, and I think that's always good when a referee can just say, yeah, I just kind of stuffed it up, right? So I always like that when a referee can do that. And I think it's a good lesson for, again, Life West is a team that plays on the edge, and if you let them play on the edge, they're gonna walk all over you. And so you've got to don't want to go into the game with just like knowing you're gonna like overly penalize them, but you have to control and manage them. And I don't mean manage as in using our voice and things like that. Just using all your tactics, I think, is just a team to look at. And then Berkeley on the same side, they're a well-coached team, and they also play on the edge, but in a different way than Life West. So it's just like reining in two sets of wild Mustangs and trying to control them. It's really difficult.
Yeah, so the first kind of theme that I kind of recognize in the game is you have Life West has some big players that are running in, and the tacklers, if they don't get a nice strong tackle up front, they tend to end up on the offensive side, and they tend to slow down the ball in not just clear and obvious ways. So we're going to go to the clip number 1 right there, where your mouse says ball carrier winning the battle number 1. And self-explanatory. I'll let it play through and you guys can see what happens here.
Got you, Molly! Mark's here. Are you ready?
I believe 6 rolling.
And then you can go to the second clip here for it's going to be ball carrier wins breakdown ruck number 2, and it's similar. And this seems to be kind of a theme that I caught it a couple times, but I wasn't catching it as much as I should. So you can see there, it's going to be actually next. You can see right here that 8 is just in the way on the tackles. And while, these clips are pretty obvious, this was kind of what was happening the whole game. You have a player that gets the ball, they're running into contact, and they're winning the battle. They're winning that tackle, and the tackler ends up being on the wrong side and slowing the ball down inevitably for one team. So I guess it was more of a self-realization, but I just wanted to hear everyone's thoughts maybe on how they kind of deal with that and you know, how to and when to deal with it. Cause I didn't deal with it early enough. I called them two or three times early on in the game, and then the problem didn't fix. And I felt like maybe I should have, you know, moved to cards or had a conversation, and I didn't do either of those.
Tim, was it the tackler that was falling on the wrong side, or the tackler and arriving players?
A lot of times the tackler or the tackler assist. You know, there'd be the first tackler would get in there and they weren't kind of taking him down, and the next player would get in there and it would just be messy. And there was just a lot of contest with the ball either side too.
Amanda, can you just play that through one more time, please?
I absolutely can.
Thank you.
Miles, are you looking at 6 blue? I had concerns about them too. They clear out from the side. There is a poacher there. It's a tough one because like the tackler's like rolling. And in the context of the game, Tim's absolutely right. Berkeley had issues rolling the whole game, but this clip in particular, I feel like actually Life West is more in the wrong.
Yep, there's a lot going on there, isn't there?
And then, you know, sometimes I think about, you know, the idea that the 8's there and she was making an attempt to roll, but she was also slowing down. The supporting players that are coming in have to adjust based on her being in the way. And so, you know, what comes first?
I think that ball should have come out to Life West. I mean, sorry, to Berkeley before any support showed up.
Yeah, I think 6 stops it, stops the poach.
Yeah, if we look at the setup of this, like right now, expected outcome, right? We know Berkeley's going to win the ball. So why don't they?
I guess, Tim, just from my perspective too, there's two different pictures that we're giving here with the same outcome that you came to the conclusion, right? Like the first one is a chop tackle on a small player who did not get out of the way at all after they made that chop tackle. And this is a situation where we've got a much larger player who's making a almost a chase tackle. And so like that's a really fast ball. And is, I mean, for me, it's a situation where that first clip that you showed, right? Like they're not able to play the ball because our player top tackles and ends up just staying there. Whereas in this situation, like with that chase, their support isn't actually there early enough to play a ball fast straight away. So while our player might be there, like they're, I don't know. It's a tough line, but it's just two different pictures.
Yeah, I think that penalty is great right there.
I mean, inherently on a chase tackle, they're going to end up on the wrong side simply because they're starting on the wrong side to begin with.
Yeah. So on the chase tackle, you know, I guess this is a question for the other referees, you know, and it's true. You're chasing them down. You know, do you reward the offensive team because they've kind of, you know, won that battle, and then but also too, how do you you know, referee that chaser because, you know, they're going to be in the way just because that's where they're going to be and you can't prevent it. So
I don't like the idea that just because it's a chase tackle means the tackler does not have an obligation to roll away. I think like you can make the tackle and roll to the side to make sure that the ball carrier has space to pop it up or to place it back. I don't think that's what we saw from number 8 in the second clip, despite the other issues. And I can't remember who said, I think it was Peter, about like if a player isn't rolling, in order for that to not be material, the support players have to be far enough away where like they're not going to get there in time to contest the defensive poach, and that the ball carrier isn't trying to pop it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody was saying just because it's a chase tackle, they don't have obligations. So
Okay, my bad.
I think they absolutely do.
But a chase tackle puts the support further away.
The support
In
for
the,
which
in
team?
in the second clip,
Yeah.
she outran her support.
She absolutely outran her support.
And
the second clip. I think these are both very tight calls, no matter how you go. And I think we're looking for clear and obvious penalties. So that's something to keep in mind.
Tim and refs, can I ask a question? I was not able to find a clip. This week has been nuts, so apologies. I did not find the clip. I'm just curious how consistently we're like reffing the defense on a squeeze ball. Because I feel like we've run into a few teams where they have players that are sort of like using that squeeze ball. And I'm not trying to hijack the conversation too much here, Amanda. Just tell me to shut up if you need to move on to something else. But sort of like, how is that squeeze ball, like a poacher on that, being regulated?
Yep. So the ball needs to be made available, or it's going to be ball carrier not releasing. I don't think we've had any examples that I've seen this year where it's been penalized. And there have been a couple where I've watched it a couple of times to see whether or not we maybe should have called a penalty. But yeah, I don't think we've called any of those this year. So.
Because I know we've talked, like when Tim came out to training, we talked about how like it's not enough just to hold the ball against somebody, right? That's like we want to actually see a lift. So in that situation, like how can we show that picture defensively if the attack is in a squeeze ball situation and we have somebody who we think have rights over the ball, what picture can we show the referee so that
Yep. So the person doing the squeeze ball has an obligation for the ball to come out and see sunlight. It can't be buried under their belly or they're liable to the penalty. So if you have a poacher who's there over top of that person and you're reaching under, through someone's back, essentially around their body, like a hug trying to get to the ball, that gives us the picture we need to blow the penalty. Am I wrong? Does anyone remember calling any of these this season? I can't think of one. So
I haven't seen any.
Yeah.
You're talking about one hand on either side of the ball carrier's body, right?
Yeah, around like you're going for the ball. It's the only thing you can do to show us. But ostensibly, anytime we see a squeeze ball and the ball is not presented, laid like an egg, right? Then we would want to penalize it. We don't want it buried under people. Just doesn't seem to be as much of a problem these days because I think everybody knows that's penalty. So.
Well, that's sounded like Hannah was saying that.
Yes, she's seeing it. Yeah.
Feeling it is a problem.
Yep.
So maybe we ought to be looking harder for it.
Absolutely.
Am I right?
I'm not asking you to do too much here, Peter. This isn't about me. I'm just trying to think like if there's a way we can show you a better picture in that situation. So I just wanted some clarity. So I appreciate that.
Then what's next?
It's going to be at the top, actually. Number 3, all the way at the top right there. So I'll play it through and I'll just get everyone's perspective on this. Wendy and I had a little different opinion here, so. So it was right there, right when I say play on. So my perspective was play on. Wendy thought this was different. We're just trying to get some perspective here. Right here, Life West 10.
Again, in real time for everybody. So I know where I stand on it. Who wants to, I guess, go through this? Are you doing like Tim and playing on, or do we see a problem here?
This one might split the room.
Miles, are you talking to us or are you unmuted?
Yeah, that was me. I just said this one might split the room. I'll let others weigh in here.
Well, we can always waterfall.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tim, this is Andrew. Ball goes backwards, play on, like it definitely disrupts the pass, but the player has the right to knock the ball backwards if they can.
This is going to be a pretty classic sevens thing too. This happens a lot in sevens, so interested to hear what other people think too.
I think it's 100% possible to be legal and disruptive. In fact, most teams want that.
Well, I'm curious to hear what Miles thinks now. So,
oh man. So is there any attempt to catch the ball there? I don't think there is. I think it's a deliberate knockdown to interrupt the pass. So I'm personally penalizing it. Who knows what would have happened, right? A clean pass, you know, they might have ran it in. I don't know. I mean,
but is it an illegal action to knock the pass down?
I feel like it falls underneath the spirit of the game.
Yeah.
They are not able to catch that ball in any other situation. We're talking penalty try, like so easy.
Yeah, spirit of the game, and this is allowed to play on. Then it's like, oh, we can just whack the ball out in between passes. It's kind of, I'm not sure what precedent that sets, but yeah, I see your point, Peter. Like the legality of it is questionable.
No, I think the illegality is questionable.
As long as you don't knock the ball forward.
She's not offside because nothing happened to create offside lines. And she knocks the ball towards her own dead ball line.
This is a conversation where I had with our 14 that they need to step into that pass instead of passing away from their body. So just in terms of the context for us, it's negated if we do the right things there.
Yep. Unless we see it go forward, I think it's got to be play on.
So the second part, or the second kind of theme that I feel like I missed opportunities to adjudicate were like higher tackles or dangerous tackles. So let's see, it's going to be down a little further. Number 4, what is it? Yeah, that one right there. So we'll play through this, and this is want to hear people's perspective on this. So I guess we agree that it's a high tackle. The question is, should I have maybe slowed this down and had a conversation? Because, it was an opportunity. It was a line break. If she ran around the corner, the 15 was right there, but, and then, subsequently after there was some more, higher tackles. So the next one, there was a high tackle and I missed an opportunity. And part of this too, though, is you can see that Life West just wants to play quickly. So if I slow the ball down, I take away their momentum here. I caught it pretty early. I blew it, but should I have kind of made a bigger deal of it to enforce, this theme a little bit more?
Yeah, she's already running towards you to take the quick tap. So the only way you're going to stop the game there is if you're going to card somebody. Does anybody disagree? And does anybody think that should be a card?
Yeah, not for me. She found herself on the neck, let go almost immediately. Maybe there was a second in there, so penalty's good with me.
Yeah. I wonder if she let go because Tim blew it.
No, she definitely knew she was going high. So, but in this picture, there was another high tackle. I don't know, maybe a couple minutes later, and that should have been my opportunity. And I let the momentum of the game go because Life West wanted to go. I let them go through it. I didn't kind of make a bigger deal out of it, and I think that was an opportunity I missed. I don't have that in here. And then we'll go to the last one. It's the dangerous tackle or great tackle. And so with that in mind, that I know I had, missed an opportunity to kind of do something. And this one is, let's play it in real time and see what people think. And then we can go through in slow motion and decide.
Get there.
So I guess the question to the group is, in isolation, is this a high tackle or is this a great tackle?
So my question for you before we even do that is, did you think there was head contact during the match or just a high tackle?
I thought it was just a high tackle. It was pretty fast. So
yeah, that's really tough. Lot at full speed, it looks like there's head contact, but then when you slow it down, there's not. So that's interesting. Sorry, and I apologize for interrupting. What was the original question?
Oh no, just the conversation about it. I mean, in real life, it looks like she hits her head, but it's more of a jostle. And also too, the ball carrier is just so upright that they're not in a position to take a good contact. So and then Hannah, if you have any thoughts here, would love to hear your thoughts on this.
I think for me, it's probably if you're made it really hard for us to have 2 yellow cards in the second half on what this is probably one of the best tackles I've seen in the WPL this year. It's really hard. It's a very hard tackle. And I think it's probably exacerbated by the player who was trailing and getting just enough of that player to make it more dramatic. We ended up with 2 yellow cards in the second half. So I guess if you're gonna get after something, it'd be helpful to sort of set that standard really early on for us. Because it's hard to get a yellow on something like this that feels like we're doing well, and then changes sort of the trajectory and the momentum of the game. But I mean, in
Yeah,
motion, like it
No,
looks.
and I
it
agree,
looks
and that's
like
a
it's
little of
high,
my,
but
no, so in isolation, real speed, it's hard because you see that head jostle back in slow motion. This was I think it's a great tackle. I think it's they're hitting the chest. She's got her, her shoulder down. I think the ball carrier isn't prepared for that. And I do agree. And that's kind of the whole theme is I wish I had done something earlier in the game about, the high tackles and everything. And then what this leads to is, where I'm kind of cornered to do it here, where I wish I had done it earlier. I'd made a bigger deal of it to set that standard early instead of kind of later in the game. So fair point.
Amanda, can you back up just a couple of frames? So what I look at in these kind of things is look at when she goes in, she's bent at the knees and the hips. So I think that's good technique. She ends high, but I mean, it's just the nature of the player running at 100 miles an hour. But that's kind of a good tackle technique.
Yeah, it's a good tackle. The first time I saw it, though, it looked all the world like there's head-to-head contact. I guess because of the way the ball carrier moves in the
Yeah,
contact.
it looks rough.
Yeah. And then when you slow it down, it's fine.
She's also clearly putting her head behind the player, who's not leading into the tackle with her head.
Yeah.
I would be completely fine with that.
Yeah, I am when I can slow it down. That's a tough one.
Tim, I think also like you don't know what you don't know. And at that first tackle that you showed us, I do agree it's a high tackle and penalizable, but I mean, like, it's a small seatbelt over the shoulder that they let go. I think if you had made a big deal of that, everyone would have been like, why is this ref so sensitive? And you didn't know that minutes, I don't know how long later in the game, you don't know how long later in the game that there's going to be like a huge hit that comes off weird. So I really wouldn't beat yourself up or change your process that you did there per se. Like, I think letting them take the quick tap and play on was exactly what that needed. Maybe another word at like a stoppage or something, but I don't think you can blame your past self for your reaction to the hard contact, if that makes sense. Like, I think you did what you should have done.
Cool, thanks.
And Tim, just for me, I think like that first 20 minutes of the game, if we're not rolling consistently, penalize us and yellow card us for that. And that sets a standard for us to be able to adjust, like if you're talking us through that first 20 minutes, it's sort of what I was saying last week. Like, if you talk us through that first 20 minutes and we're not adjusting, then we should have a yellow card by minute 20, right? As opposed to like that. I'd rather have that than sort of things, honestly, like getting to the point where a referee feels like you haven't like quite made it strict enough, and now at minute 60, that's when we have to deal with it. Like, I think it's a lot easier for us to set a standard for ourselves if that happens early on and we can adjust to that early on, as opposed to like it can really have a big impact on the game in a lot of ways in the last 60 70 minutes. So that's just
Yeah, no, and I think that's a good kind of learning point for me too. And also for the other referees, it's like, if you're going to make a point, you got to make a point early, because you don't want to give that card in the 60th minute. In this game, the game wasn't close, right? So, I mean, it got close, but the All Blues had the game.
It got close because we had 2 yellow cards in the last 30 minutes of the game, Tim.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
But it's a lesson, right? If I had made a stamp earlier in the game, the teams would have adjusted and it wouldn't have been impacted by me, the referee, as much if I had done stuff early on. So, and maybe that goes to a point that Lindsay talked about earlier with that high tackle. Like, you don't want to be put in a situation, Lindsay, where that player makes a high tackle in the 60th minute and then they lose that player. If you deal with it at the start or in some way, it cleans up the game. So
Good comments, everybody. Thank you. Is that it, Tim? Is there another one?
That was it. We're good.
Awesome. Oh, let's see, where are we? 9:51. What's going well? Good week for offside, if you ask me. And opportunities, I think we're still pretty quick on the whistle at the breakdown. So we can let the game develop more and make sure the things that we're calling are clear and obvious. And remember, when we do get in trouble, that we can use an unplayable. We really aren't using those at all these days. So keep it in your pocket, use an unplayable. Random stuff. There's only 2 matches next week. So it'll be potentially a shorter call. Also, I will be in Iowa. So if anybody wants to step up to run the call from their home with good Wi-Fi rather than my Marriott with spotty Wi-Fi, that would be awesome. Just shoot me a text if you're willing to do that. I'll be on the call to talk or whatever, but I just need somebody to flip through the videos so there's no lag or less lag. Unavailable dates, I think I've heard from almost everybody, but not everybody. So give me those, because in the next 2 weeks, I'll start working on the schedule for the second part of the season. And then if you haven't marked your calendars already, finals are going to be October 14th weekend. And at the moment, the WPL is saying it's going to happen on the East Coast. So we will be sending 1 referee and 2 ARs from our crew. And I'm assuming any coaches or anybody else who wants to travel, that will be, on your own dime. But it would be cool to have everybody here if people want to travel. So something to think about. That's about it, I think. Does anybody have any last words before? Oh, wait, there's one more slide, you guys. Okay. Round 8 looks like this. Amelia is heading. Is it the All Blues home game? Or did I get this back?
This is in Beantown.
Yeah, I thought it might be backwards. Okay, I'll have to fix this before I post it. Marty's doing the New York match, and then round 8 continues the following week in 624, where Tim will be doing the Life West match. So a little bit weird the way they split it up, but there must be a reason. Any last words? I'll stop sharing or stop whatever recording. Cool.